So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Lindsay Harmon. I'm the marketing manager at CollectiveSun, and we are thrilled to have you here. So thank you for joining us for our webinar with the Association for Mental Health and Wellness. So I'm pleased to introduce you to our speakers. We will have Matt Brennan, who's our Vice President of Sales here at CollectiveSun, as well as Colleen Merlot, who's the CEO, Chief Executive Officer at the Association for Mental Health and Wellness. We also include their contact info. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Our agenda for today will be going over who is CollectiveSun and what we do. We will introduce you to the Association of Mental Health and Wellness, and they will be sharing their solar journey and hopefully inspiring a few people. And then at the end, we will have questions and discussions. So as part of our Zoom webinar, please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. We will get to them as we go. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if anything isn't covered during that time, we will be following up with you with anything that we didn't get to. So at this time, I will be passing the mic over to Matt, our VP of Sales. And here you go, Matt. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. Appreciate that. If you could actually leave it at this slide for just a second. Let me talk a little bit about CollectiveSun. Actually, no, go ahead, Lindsay. Go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. And just to give you a little background on CollectiveSun. We've been doing this since 2011, and our focus is entirely on nonprofits. We started with a mission to really deploy as much solar, and at the time, not that much storage, but that's definitely coming online now. But now solar and storage on as many tax-exempt entities that we could across the country. And we identified a problem that I think many of you are aware of on this call. In that if you're a tax-exempt entity or a nonprofit, you can't get direct access to the tax credit. And solar has been incentivized. Solar and storage have been incentivized through the tax code. So if you're a business, you get a tax credit. You also, as a business, can depreciate it, but you get a big tax credit. If you're a homeowner, you get a big tax credit. Currently, that's set at 26%. So you get a 26% tax credit. It's a dollar for dollar credit that comes right off your income tax. And that's a great deal. But if you're a tax exempt, if you're a community of faith, or if you're the Association for Mental Health and Wellness, and thanks, Colleen, for being a part of this. It's been a great project. You can't get access to that. So that's what we do. And I'm going to just spend just a couple of minutes kind of walking through that. Because if you're thinking about doing solar, it's worth considering, working with a third party like us to monetize these tax credits. And we've done this over 150 times with over 150 nonprofits across the country. We've done it in 20 states. The main reason, we're not in 50 states is because there aren't always, solar friendly utilities we can work with. We're limited by the utility. We can work in any utility that allows third party ownership. So if your utility allows leases and power purchase agreements, we can work there. And most states are coming on board, and most utilities, so we're seeing a lot of that. So we're growing across the country, and we're excited about that. Lindsay, if you could switch to the next slide, please. So just an overview of what we do. So I mentioned sort of the problem with the challenge is monetizing a tax credit. How do you do that if you don't have a tax appetite? Well, you can do that through third-party ownership, through leases and service contracts and power purchase agreements. An investor can use those tax credits. And there are all kinds of different flavors of how that can happen. We happen to have a product that we call a solar power agreement, or an SPA. It's a prepaid service contract. It's very much like a prepaid lease. So maybe a comparison would be, imagine if you leased a car. Instead of paying a monthly lease payment, you prepaid you fund it all up front for the next 5 or 6 years, or 4 years or 10 years, however they want to structure it. And you may say, why would you ever do that? Well, imagine they gave you a discount. You know, the car manufacturer gave you a discount. So look, prepay this lease, you'll get a big discount off the cash price. And then, you know, as a car manufacturer, we'll own it, we'll operate it, we'll maintain it, and you're done. We have something similar. And we do this so that nonprofits can capture part of the tax credit. So we have a 20-year prepaid service contract, very similar to a prepaid lease. And that provides for at least a 12% discount. Larger systems, we do a larger discount. Now, there's a 20-year service contract, and it's prepaid all up front. And when I say it's prepaid, you know, it's funded through milestone payments, you know, like permitting once construction starts. So you're not exactly prepaying it all up front, you're paying it out as you go, but it's 88%. You fund 88%, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where a nonprofit can get access to that 88%. In any event, that 88% pays for this service contract. We call it a solar power agreement for 20 years, and that's it. The nonprofit's done paying us. They've prepaid this contract for 20 years, and we, as CollectiveSun, we own, operate, and maintain the asset. If it's solar and storage, we own both, and we have ownership responsibility for both. We pay the last 12% to the contractor. Now, if it's a bigger system, it's a bigger discount, so we're putting in more than 12%. So the contractor, and I've looked at the registration earlier, a few contractors on the call. I actually saw some familiar names on there. That's always great. But if you're a contractor, you know, you're made whole. You get your 100%. The nonprofit funds 88%. We fund 12%. CollectiveSun owns, operates, and maintains the system, and we provide a performance guarantee to the host being the nonprofit. Now, so from the nonprofit's point of view, there are a few things that CollectiveSun provides. One is a discount, kind of like a 12% coupon, and they also defer ownership for 6 years. So ownership falls on us and all the responsibility of ownership. And the last is that we also do quite a bit of project management. So if you're a nonprofit, let's say you don't have a facilities manager, you don't have a project manager, you're not doing a ton of capital improvement projects, you may want some help along the way. The contractors we work with are great about facilitating the project and keeping everybody in the loop. But you may also want somebody like us to help with the process, so we can help with vetting and we can help with project management. A big question always comes up: where does that 88% come from, right? If we're funding 12%, the nonprofit's funding 88%. Where does that 88%? How do you fund that? Lindsay, so if you could jump to the next slide. There's quite a few options. I can tell you the Association for Mental Health and Wellness did have cash reserves. That's number 2 on the list. So they funded that directly through cash reserves, that 88%. That doesn't always happen. It happens in a lot of cases, but in some, that 88% is being borrowed. And we call that sometimes the debt side of the transaction. So if you hear someone say that from our side, we're referring to that 88%. One option that we use across the country where it's available and it's growing is a commercial PACE loan. That's a loan that is assessed on your property tax bill. Generally, it's a 20-year loan, and the payments are favorable in most cases. So when I say favorable in most cases, it's where that loan payment is lower than what your electric bill was. So you're saving you're saving money every single month. We have a great partner in the commercial PACE market. And if anybody is considering CPACE or if it's coming online in your area, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Cash reserves is an obvious one. Quite a few nonprofits do have cash reserves. That's how they fund that 88%. Donations, another obvious one. I won't spend too much time on that. But the 4th and 5th one, and really the 7th one, they're all kind of tied together, are different kinds of lenders. We work with a number of mission-aligned lenders that do want to lend that 88% for these projects. And we're very happy to make a connection, make an introduction. CollectiveSun, earns its fees from our tax investors. So we don't earn any fees when we make introductions to lenders or for contractors for that matter. So when we make an introduction to another lender, you're free to get a quote from them. and we're working with quite a few of them. We're working with a great family foundation in San Diego, and we're talking to more family foundations who are interested in helping finance these kinds of projects. So that falls under mission aligned and impact investors. If anybody has any questions about that, I'd be thrilled to talk to you about that. And we have resources that can help. And of course, there are traditional lenders. If you've done any capital improvement projects and you've borrowed money from traditional lenders, we've worked with quite a few across the country. Recently, the Bank of the West, and there have been a number of others. And credit unions are also a great way to go. So if you have relationships with lenders, that's a great way to fund that 88%. And crowd lending is the last one I'll mention here. When we first got started building CollectiveSun in 2011, our model was based on raising money from the communities of nonprofits. We raised money from churches, and it was the congregation that was lending essentially that 88%. It was a little bit of a different model, but they were providing that debt piece. And the church was paying them back plus interest, and they were all. The nice thing about that was almost always favorable rates, or always favorable rates, because you're borrowing from your congregation. So if anyone's interested in crowd lending, we'd be very happy to talk to you about that as well. But those are the main options for raising the 88% to fund the solar power agreement. And Lindsay, if you could jump to the next slide. So now I would like to hand it off to Colleen with the Association for Mental Health and Wellness. This has been a fantastic project for us. And she was really kind to be a part of this to help spread the word. So I will hand it off to Colleen, and I'll mute myself and turn off my video.
Thank you so much, Matt, for the introduction, and thank you, Lindsay. Really excited to be here today to talk about the project and tell you more about the organization and how our solar project is really making an impact towards our mission. It's been wonderful working with all of you. So just to tell you a little bit about the organization, the Association for Mental Health and Wellness is a large, well-established, multi-site, not-for-profit behavioral health organization. And we're licensed by the New York State Office of Mental Health. Our mission is to empower and inspire people of all communities to identify, pursue, and sustain healthy and meaningful lives. So, with that mission, it really does tie back to not only people's emotional wellness and physical wellness, but really their environmental wellness. And that's part of the reason why we looked to have a solar project. And I'll talk more about that in a little while, but I want to tell you more about who we are. So we serve more than 3,500 clients annually across diverse communities throughout Suffolk County, New York, on Long Island. And we have 4 locations that provide those services. We are the project of a merger that took place in 2014 of similarly goal-oriented organizations. So we were a psych rehab organization that merged with a mental health advocacy agency and a veterans organization to form the Association for Mental Health and Wellness back in 2014. We provide a comprehensive range of person-centered recovery and wellness-driven programs for adults that are affected by psychiatric disability, trauma, and that includes trauma related to military service, and complex health conditions through 4 service areas that include our community education and outreach, psychiatric rehab and support. We have care coordination and service engagement. And we also operate Suffolk County United Veterans. And our core services and programs comprise New York State funded personal recovery oriented services. So we have members that come on site and really work towards goals that help them lead meaningful and fulfilling lives. So some people come to us and say, you know what, I'm disenfranchised from my family. My main goal is really getting to a place where I can start to have a relationship with, my siblings or my parents or my kids. And that's the goal. Some people come to us wanting to go back to school or get a job, and that's the goal. So it's really very person-centered and helps the person to live the best life that they choose. We also, again, have a care coordination and service engagement. So we serve people with psychiatric disabilities as well as other chronic health conditions to coordinate their care. That program is very much in the community, meeting people where they are and helping people to live a life that is well. And then we also have our Suffolk County United Veterans, which focuses on helping people who served our country, which we are indebted to those individuals, to reintegrate back into, civilian life, and deal with the emotional turmoil that they may have faced, to deal with some of the financial constraints, and really just utilize the skills they gained in the military in a way that is impactful and helpful in their civilian lives. And I mentioned the focus on wellness. So the reason that we started a solar journey is because our organization has always been very connected to the environment and looking at how that affects someone's wellness. So, we've been an organization that, as much as we can be outside with the people that we serve, we're outside because we know the importance of being in the environment and what that does for individuals. We started a community garden that serves the people that we provide services to. So sometimes when it's not COVID, we serve meals at our center, and we use the produce from the garden to feed people on site. We also have food pantries, and the garden helps to provide fresh vegetables and healthy foods to the food pantry. And again, we're out in that garden as much as we can with the people that we serve, because we know that just spending some time in nature helps people's emotional health. So the solar project really lent itself well to some of those well-established programs, and was just really a way to enhance what we were doing and what we as an organization decided we wanted to be known for and be impactful towards. So I think, Matt, you're gonna lead us through some of the impact that our solar project has had. And what I can tell you is, we've only been live a couple of months with our solar project, but we're already seeing reduced costs. And it's really wonderful. We have a dashboard that we can go on and look at, and to see the impact that we're having in terms of, the energy that we're generating. And, it's very easy to see and look at. You don't need to have a scientific brain or an engineering brain. You can really look at it and see very clearly the impact that you're having.
Thanks for that, Colleen. Let me touch on this briefly. And later, we'll go through the Q&A. I think we'll save a little bit of time just to talk about the process as well, because a lot of the folks on the call are from nonprofits, and questions that keep coming up are, how do you go about this? What was it like? What did you learn? And those kinds of things. So I think we'll share a little bit more at the end. But these are good numbers to look at. I want to cover this a little bit. And remember, things are different depending on what part of the country you're in. For example, what I mean by that is, obviously the production numbers are different. This is a project in New York. The amount of energy you get from the sun is different in New York than it is in Southern California. Might not be as different as you think, actually, but it certainly is, quite a bit different. So a lot of questions that come up at a very high level is, what's the payback, right? I put in it turned out the net cost of this system was $156,000. I'll talk about the breakdown in a second. But what's the payback? Well, the simple payback is just, you spend $156,000. How much energy is that going to offset each year? And you divide that number in your total cost, and it takes you 9 years to pay it back. It's that simple. Now, sometimes people will include an escalator and utility cost and that kind of thing, but this is a 9-year payback. So after 9 years, they will, we estimate, based on current bills, have produced $156,000 worth of electricity. It's that simple. Now, these panels are warranted for 25 years. We extend the inverter warranties to 20 years. Those are the two main components of the solar system. You have your solar modules and you have inverters. Those have manufacturer's warranties, again, of 25 years. And then the inverters are 10 years typically, or 12 years. We extend it to 20. So most the equipment should be good there, and then we have a 10-year workmanship with the manufacturer. In any event, you have quite a few years after that 9-year payback where the Association for Mental Health and Wellness will be producing free energy. That energy will be used, to fund their operations and their mission. One thing to dive into a little bit, if you are a nonprofit and looking at the total cost, you can see the system size there, right? It's 89 kilowatts. The total cost of this system was a little bit more than $156,000. It was $177,000. We gave a 12% discount, so it came to 156. They got a great price on this, in my opinion. They worked with a very good contractor in New York. It was very competitive. Prices in certain parts of the country can be a lot more expensive to do this kind of work. So this is a very competitive price. And for nonprofits, a metric that you may hear is dollar per watt. So you divide the total cost by the 89 kilowatts and here's your dollar per watt. And this project was under $2 a watt, which the gross cost, which is excellent. And they're going to produce a lot of energy, over 25 million kilowatt hours over the life of the system. So once you work with a contractor, if you work with us, you'll get used to some of these units of measure, kilowatt hours or kilowatts and dollar per watt, simple payback. And contractors will help you with that, and we can help you as well, answer those questions. For nonprofits, you pick the contractor. You get to choose who you work with. We do approve them. We want to make sure they have the right kind of commercial experience we're looking for. So we are unbiased on who you choose, but of course we want them to meet the commercial requirements we have for our investors. And again, we'll help you. We can help you with that process. Lindsay, if you want to jump to the next slide. We talk a lot about how compelling the economics are for projects, right? That comes up. What's the payback? How much is it going to cost? Where's the 80% the funding going to come from? But a big part of this, obviously, is the environmental benefits. So there are significant benefits in doing projects like this. And some nonprofits really publish this. Sometimes they have something in their lobby about it. They put it on their website. They have a tracker that keeps incrementing over time. And most contractors will tell you this in their proposal. But you could read it there yourself. But we're talking about removing almost 4,000 cars from the road, gas emission cars. So there is a very significant environmental benefit that I think everyone knows that, and that is a driver to a lot of these projects. May not be a bigger driver as the economics, but it's still important. Do you want to jump to the next one, Lindsay? And we were thinking about handing it back to Colleen just to talk just a little bit about a little bit more about the solar project, kind of how it came together. And I'm going to stay on with the video so we can just kind of talk a little bit about that together. Colleen, if you could.
Sure. So this is our team. I just want to mention, and there was a lot of will within the organization from our staff who, care about the environment. A lot of us drive hybrid cars. And so, it was in response to, we're always doing things to help our staff feel connected to our mission and to help them feel like they're working at a place that matters. And certainly our mission does that every single day. But that was driven really in response to what the community wanted and what we wanted to portray. Matt was mentioning a little bit about how to choose the solar company and the fact that they will help you along the way. And you absolutely did help us with that. We got several quotes. And we didn't just choose the company that was the cheapest, which typically nonprofits often have to do, right? But we really did. We checked references on the companies that we looked at. We asked to see solar projects and actually went out and did site visits so that we could assess the project from that standpoint and talk with people who actually were working with the company. one of the key factors that we've learned along the way with doing other construction projects or capital improvement is to work with a company who's worked in your township before. Where I am on Long Island, we have, a lot of different municipalities, and they all have different rules and different people you have to talk to move these projects along. And someone having been through that process with the zoning boards, with the permitting process in your town is really important. And it'll help you avoid delays with the project, because that really can be stifling, is waiting for those permits and waiting for the inspectors to come out and making sure that they really know what your town and municipality is going to require of the project, so that you're getting those things done up front. Another piece for us that I think, people might be surprised that we embarked on this project is that, we don't have a facilities manager. As the CEO, myself and a couple of people who are, the backbones of the organization really helped to lead the project. So we needed to look for vendors and who would be partners, not just, we're going to come in and do this project and, you're going to be out on your own to coordinate. We wanted someone who was going to provide project management, help with all the aspects of installation, and really with commissioning the project and getting it online. That included, engineering and permitting and working with all the different components that needed to go into this project. That was really important to us, someone who would collaborate and be a partner.
Colleen, thanks for that. That actually brought up a few questions that I have for you about this project, and we do have time for that. So I think we should move to the kind of the Q&A, if you don't mind. And there's our, I think we'll leave that slide up. Any questions at all, you can reach out to me. And Colleen was nice enough to offer her email address. If you have any questions for her, she said that would be okay as well, so she could share her experience with solar. Colleen, I'll go into the Q&A from the participants. A couple of things you mentioned, working with a local contractor. In some utilities, we don't insist on it, but we very much want the contractor to have a lot of experience with that jurisdiction, because some jurisdictions really do have processes that, to really navigate them, you want somebody who's worked there before. And so I think
That's absolutely right, because otherwise it's going to cost you valuable time and money, right? If it's not done right the first time, or you have to go back and re-permit, that's an additional fee. And non-for-profits need to avoid those additional costs.
And Colin, you came in a little bit late to this. I mean, as a new executive director, chief executive officer, you came in the middle of the project. So you didn't see the full time frame, but could you share about when this project started and when it finished? How long did it take?
Sure. It took about 1.5 years from the time that we engaged with you, at CollectiveSun, to bring it to completion. But it was part of actually a larger project that we were embarking on. So the solar panels is a key component to it, but we wanted to make our entire building more energy efficient. So that included replacing the HVAC system, installing new windows, and our lights now, they go off automatically when someone's not in the room. So it was part of a larger project. So there were a lot of moving parts with that. And also it did take place during COVID. So there were delays with getting permits because municipalities were closed. It was hard to get people on site at certain times. But I think, every project takes longer than you think it's going to. And that's a lesson learned in terms of just being patient with the process. And, we were really lucky because the company that we were working with, the solar company, was very much on the, happy to provide communication. As much information as we wanted, they were willing to give it. And they stayed very much on top of the project for us because, as I mentioned, we don't have a facilities manager. And so, I can't stop my day-to-day to manage this project with the with every aspect of it, but they really stayed very much on top of it and made sure that permits were being moved through with the town, and that there was coordination between the energy company. And, we installed a generator as part of the project as well, so that if we are in a situation where we lose power, the generator will kick on, and it's powered by the solar panels. So we really wanted to become a place that was safe and welcoming and warm, and a place where the people we served knew in a time of crisis, if there was a power outage or some other kind of natural disaster where people needed to find a way to get to a shelter, that we could be that spot for people. That was really important to us. So, having someone who was going to help us manage all of those other pieces was really important as well.
Yeah, not every nonprofit has a facilities manager, right? And we happen to do a lot of communities of faith, where this is done by volunteers, right? That's who's going to champion this project. So it's important to find a contractor that knows that, in my opinion, because they may need to deploy some extra resources. And also with CollectiveSun, we realize that too, so we can help. When needed, we'll do more of the project management, because we know that some nonprofits just don't have those resources. And you mentioned, that the timeline, this was a much bigger project that, would have taken longer anyway. There were other circumstances that did extend it, but if you're if you're a nonprofit on the call, it's not unusual. I mean, I can tell you from this project, there was 3 months between when the permit was submitted and then when it came back from the jurisdiction. A 3-month turnaround is typical that we see across the country. It can be longer in California, it can be shorter in some other places. So you have 3 months there, and you have a few months of just the installation. And a lot of times they don't happen in a linear fashion. You don't get the permit back from the permitting office, and then the next day you're on site. So these things do take some time. And it's been, with COVID, it's been surprisingly busy, and contractors are very active. So keep that in mind if you are thinking about a project. With commercial projects, there is, a few months for permitting, typically a couple months for the installation, and there are logistics in between. And Colleen, there are some specific Q&A that we will get to, but just on your project, if you could share. And by the way, Empower was a contractor on this, and by all accounts, everyone was very happy with them, and they did a great job. And they really kept the ball moving,
Yes.
during these challenging times. So that's great to hear. How do you know? I know you weren't there at the very beginning of this project, but do you know how many quotes you got and how you went about getting them? How did you find?
We had 3 quotes. That's typical. What we do for projects is get 3 quotes. And CollectiveSun was helpful in getting us a couple of names to vet. And then also we knew some people in the community who were were involved with solar, and we ended up getting 3 quotes, for the project to take a look at. And as I said, we vetted, and went out and looked at different projects that the company that we chose to go with actually installed in the area, and spoke to the people who had the solar. So
that's great. I mean, there are some contractors on the call, and most contractors expect everybody to get 3 quotes. They expect that. So if you're a nonprofit, that is the kind of the best practice. And for the contractors out there, I'll just say this: if you're listening, we don't shop your projects. When you bring us a project, we don't introduce them to other people, but you should expect that nonprofit to get other quotes. And that's just, that's good stewardship. Really
right, we're dealing with public funds or private donations, and we want to make sure that we are, being good stewards of that funding.
Maybe mandated that you have to get 3 quotes in some cases. And just for the nonprofits out there, no contractor has ever provided a reference that wasn't going to provide a good one, right? So remember that, and kind of read between the lines and make sure you really, you do a little bit of digging. It's not hard really in your community to find out, to get some good feedback. By and large, people do great work, and we have great experience with the contractors.
And I think too, trust your gut, right? So if somebody takes, 3 weeks to get back to you when you're calling for a quote, they're going to take longer to get back to you, if there's a problem with your project along the way. So, I get it. There's delays and things, and that's to be expected with communication sometimes. But if it's taking them a long time and they're not being responsive from the very beginning, consider that.
Well, I'll remember that too when I'm replying to people. It's important, you really do want to be timely, and that is a kind of a red flag when you don't hear back from somebody for a while. And for nonprofits, remember this too. There is a little bit of bias with contractors because they do know that nonprofits tend, in general, maybe to move a little more slowly for some of these projects. Not always the case. Some move right away. So you may get a bit of that. So just keep that in mind. We've done enough of these projects, so we're familiar with the timelines, and our expectations are in line, I believe. But sometimes if you don't hear back right away, that could be part of the reason, and it might be worth communicating that. Like, hey, you're not getting back to me because you don't think we're going to do the project or whatever. But there could be a little bit of a bias there. Colleen, was there anything on this project that you learned that was kind of a surprise, or anything like that you might want to share?
Again, I think it's just a matter of being patient and knowing that things are always going to take a bit longer than you anticipated. But I also think I was surprised at how enthusiastic really the community was about the project. Where we're situated, we're in an industrial area, but right on the back end of a residential area. And we did have people from the community stopping and saying, oh, we see you're installing solar, and being really excited about it. And it was an opportunity for them to learn more about the organization. We try to be good neighbors, and we try to have things where the community can come in and visit, but mental health doesn't always do it. And somehow solar was able to do that for us a little bit. So we were really excited about that.
That's really cool. Just curious, was there a mention of it anywhere, in a newsletter or anything like that you guys, did you promote it at all, or is it?
So we didn't promote it to the external world yet, but we are going to add some of those metrics to our website. Now that it's for next year's annual report, it will be a key component in terms of reporting it out to our funders and our constituents, because I think it's a really wonderful statement in terms of our commitment to cost savings overall, and also to really promoting our mission, which is around health and wellness.
I mean, have you thought about the where the savings will go? I mean, I know nonprofits a lot of times say, $1 donated equals, this many meals served, or this many sessions of this. Those are kind of metrics that you include in your.
Yeah. So, interestingly, we had this kind of earmarked for certain things around our community garden and growing that project and really using it towards that wellness piece. But unfortunately, we didn't predict a global pandemic, and we didn't predict the increased needs in our community to provide crisis support to communities and families, and to help people with, recovering from the trauma that we've all been through over the past year. So cost savings are really going towards that at this point. We're going to earmark dollars to be able to continue some of the crisis services that are currently grant funded through New York State.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, there are some questions, some kind of specific Q&A questions I wouldn't mind going through. We have a little bit of time here. Colleen, is there anything else you want to add, or?
No, I'm just, if people have questions or think that, maybe I, want to ask me something offline about how it was to work with CollectiveSun, I am happy to speak with you. You can send me an email, and I'd be happy to, either set up a time where we could talk or email you back. Again, I think that for not-for-profits, we're constantly making choices about how to spend our money and where to spend our money. And we didn't make the decision to install solar panels lightly, right? So we've already talked about the cost. $156,000 is not insignificant, right? When we think about what we can do with those dollars. But we looked at this as a long-term investment, not only in cost savings, but also in our mission and our values. And we made a decision based on that, and I'm really happy with the decision that was made.
That's definitely encouraging. It's offsetting an operating expense that you're going to pay, right? Everyone's going to continue to pay their electric bill. So if there is a way to invest in that and offset that, whether 100%, you can't always get to 100%, but it really makes sense.
And honestly, with the energy efficiencies that we put in on top of this, which I know won't be a part of everyone's project, we really are saving a significant amount of money every month.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier because you brought that up, because this was part of a larger construction project with energy efficiency. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in these buildings. Between lighting and HVAC, you can really have some significant impact on your energy bill by doing that first. I mean, there's no reason to offset 100% of an inefficient bill if you can do that. I mean, you really should go in when an opportunity is available and do these things. And depending on where you are in the country, there could be some rebates and from the utility or from the state or from the city even to help with that. I mean, that's really that is a best practice. I mean, your organization really did a great job on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
Thanks. I wouldn't mind just spending a few minutes going through some of the Q&A. They're really about the transaction itself. So I think I'll take those.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll be here in the background, but if you need me,
Okay.
You can give a holler.
Thanks. So one question was, excuse me, how large a square footage for generating power was 89 kilowatts. And I don't have the exact square footage. It's probably somewhere in a couple thousand square feet of roof space, maybe a bit less, depending on the wattage of the panels, but something in that area. And I can, if you want to reach out and ask, I can definitely get you an exact number on that. And there were some questions just in general about the solar power agreement. Who owns the energy? Where does the energy go? Well, all the energy goes to the nonprofit, 100% of it. The solar power agreement is a service contract, and within the service contract, all the energy goes to the nonprofit. So if it overproduces what we thought it would, all that extra energy goes to them. So in other words, all of it goes to them. And in some jurisdictions or some states, there are other rebates, right? There's more than just a tax credit. Sometimes there's a utility rebate, sometimes a state rebate. Well, all of that goes to the nonprofit too. Now, in some cases, the nonprofit wants to assign it to somebody. For example, if there's a state rebate or utility rebate, they will assign that rebate to the contractor, let's say, so that they're basically floating the rebate and the contractor gets it. It just lowers the out-of-pocket expense to the nonprofit, or how much money they need to borrow. Because remember, with our transaction, there's still a funding of 88%. But the point is, state, local utility incentives and rebates all go to the host or to whoever they want to assign them to. And then there's just some basic questions about, who qualifies for this? Like, who can use this? Well, it's best for tax exempt entities. And I say that because if you're a for-profit and you have a tax appetite, you should use a 26% tax credit, not work through us. That's a better deal for you. Now, we do work with some for-profits that don't have a tax appetite for whatever reason. They're carrying losses forward. So we work with them as well, but by and large, we just work with nonprofits. And, I've used that term broadly. It's, communities of faith, service organizations, as you saw with, Association for Mental Health and Wellness. We work with governments, schools, HOAs. So really anybody without a tax appetite, that's who qualifies. And is a good fit for us. And a driving factor for where we can operate is whether or not the utility will allow leases and power purchase agreements and service contracts So basically third-party ownerships of solar and solar plus storage projects. If you don't know the answer to that, you don't know if utility allows it, reach out to us. We keep a database of utilities that we're constantly adding to, because as we grow, we need to find out if utility will allow us to operate there. So we maintain that. We have resources, and we can find out, and we can get an answer from your utility. So just call or write, and we'll take care of that. Let me jump ahead here. A lot of do you have zero down options? We do. Now again, we're doing this prepaid service contract. This is what the association did, and they had cash reserve, so that wasn't a zero down option. But the money can come from mission aligned lenders, traditional lenders, C-PACE loan. We can make introductions to all of those that all of those kinds of lenders if you're interested. So it can be a zero down option. Have you worked in New Mexico? Question just came up. I don't know if I can multitask here. I believe we have worked in New Mexico. I'll definitely email you with the answer to that, but I'm pretty sure we have done a project in New Mexico. And again, it's just a function of the utility. Will they allow us to operate there? And if you're in Massachusetts, for example, there's lots of little muni utilities. So we can check with them to make sure we can operate there. Who chooses the contractor? That's a good question. We allow the nonprofit to choose. Again, we can make introductions, or you can find contractors in your area, as long as they meet our requirements, for doing commercial systems. We absolutely can work with them. And kind of a related question on hardware. And I think they mean, what kind of products can we use? Can we use any solar panel? Can we use any inverter? Can we use any battery system? We have well, not exactly, but we do have a very long list of, manufacturers that we can work with. And that's, our contractors are familiar with most of them. So if anything comes up, anybody has any questions on whether or not we can use a certain, manufacturer, let us know. And if it's not on the list, we'll do everything to get our investors to improve it. So that list is always growing, but we do vet that list. Let's see. Do we have any supporting materials that tell you, that describe more of the solar power agreement? We do. If anybody has any questions, just reach out. We can send you an email. We have a couple of very short videos. We have some marketing material that, one or two pages that explain a bit more about the solar power agreement. Let's see here. Does a prospect have, do you have to own the property, basically is what it says here. Okay, so if you're a nonprofit and you don't own the building, can we still do this? We can. Now we want to see a kind of a long-term lease, generally over 6 years, and we do have to talk with a property owner and make some arrangements there. But it's not a requirement to own the building, but there are some, we do have to do a little bit more digging on that, and we have done projects where the nonprofit doesn't own the building. For example, we did a museum in San Diego. That one jumps out of mind. Minimum project size, that's 50 kilowatts is the minimum size. And just looking at a few more here. I think we covered most of these. All right, well, just a kind of question about the ownership of, who owns a solar system. And just to cover that one more time, and again, it's not intuitive, so we're happy to talk about, share about this and kind of describe it, because you probably haven't, if you're a nonprofit, you probably haven't done many of these projects. So maybe the only one that you do, so we'll spend as much time as, describing it to make this as helpful and easy as possible. But we do own the system. We own it. If it's solar and storage, we own the entire asset. We own that for at least the first 6 years. So all ownership responsibility resides with us. So basically, we're the first owner. The nonprofit is the second owner. Ownership comes at the end of the 6th year. So that's the reason why we do that, is so that we can use that tax credit, because the tax credit follows ownership, and then we can pass through that 12% discount. If it's a larger project, we can talk about a larger discount too. And I think, okay, nothing else came up, and going through the rest of them, I think that covers pretty much the Q&A. But if anything else comes up, please feel free to reach out. We'll make this available to everybody. There'll be a follow-up email. Once we get the webinar uploaded, we'll make sure everybody has a copy of it. And if you want the presentation, we can provide that too, if you wanted the slides. And I think that's about it. So I think I'll stop talking. I'll sign off, hand it back to Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yes, we will definitely be following up. Sorry. And tomorrow we'll be sending out an email with a nice wrap up of all this content. And for those that were asking for specific marketing materials, we'll definitely be following up with you. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you especially to Colleen and your organization for being a part of this wonderful presentation. So we appreciate your time, everybody, and have a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you so much.